One of the things about being in the IT space is it never stays still, and you have to either keep moving forward or die. The key challenges I'd have, if you look to any CIO, we're going to have similar challenges, but if you're in an environment where, say it's a manufacturing environment where you don't really face out to customers, it's more of a kind of you're running a shop, you've one set of challenges. In a banking environment or any environment where you're looking out to customers, you have both. And so in our world, we have to be able to run a core set of services. If I think even though it's just payments, people take payments for granted. So you pay for things, and you have your Netflix subscription, or you pay in a shop, or whatever it is. But we would be processing in terms of value twice the GDP of Ireland every year through the payments engine. So it's a significant piece of, really, you could think of it as national infrastructure. So we need to run that factory element of the bank, just make sure we run the core services. The other side of it then is we have customers using our services and depending on them. As we've kind of brought greater capability into internet banking, mobile banking, your tablet banking, people come to use these and depend on these different capabilities they have, even something simple like a quick balance check, or applying for a loan, whatever, transferring money to somebody. These things really matter to customers, and we have to make sure we're able to do that front end stuff as well. I mean, a simple example might be, a parent sends somebody off to college, and they're in college and they need some money, and you're going to transfer money to them. If we can't provide that service to you, it has an impact on real human beings. So there's that kind of back office element of it, and there's the front piece where human beings are depending on us. So those would be the kind of challenges I would be thinking about daily. So the way the challenges as a CIO would have changed over the years that I've been in the business, really, you've got those core challenges that I talked about in terms of running a factory and supporting customers, but the environment in which you do that now is different. The first thing is it all has to happen faster. So from a customer perspective, any of us who use technology, you could be, on your mobile phone, just any service you're getting, you expect things to happen quick. You expect updates to come on a regular basis. You expect new features to be delivered. So the pace at which change has to arrive is different. So when I would have started in the business, you would go in, you would spend some years delivering a new system, and then that system might sit there for years and nothing really would happen to it. That's not the world we're in anymore. So how we deliver new technologies, how we deliver services, and the pace we deliver them at is key. Another big thing that's happened is, and if you look at the outside context, things like cyber. So, cyber defense from an IT perspective is a huge issue. There's an old saying, if you could look at soccer or anything else, and if you're in defense, you have to be good all the time. The attacker only has to be lucky once. And it's a similar thing in the cyberspace. So when we look at that, it's an area that we would have to put a lot of focus into, like all organizations do, or certainly should be. So that's a new challenge within which we operate. So as we, at one hand, expose more services to customers and to the outside world, you have to at the same time protect yourself from an increasing threat landscape. So if we're coming up with new initiatives and we're thinking about how we're going to drive those through, or how we're going to get funding for them, it's a similar story that you'll get from any CIO. So the first thing is to really understand there are two sides that we would be investing in. One would be keeping the lights on. So there's a certain amount of money we would need to spend on an annual basis just to sustain our environment, and that could be in something as simple as a service that we deliver is very popular, lots of people are using it, it could be internal or external, that drives up our requirement for compute power. If we got a lot of transactions, a lot of activities, that can drive up our requirement for data storage. So you have to be able to pay for the increased capacity. So there would be one example in a kind of a sustainment and maintenance type spend. But there'll be others where something may be coming to end of life, it's going to run out of support and we need to replace it with something new. So those would be the kind of keep the lights on activities. Then you get into, I think, the more interesting stuff where you talk about net new capabilities, where we're talking about either somebody from a business function perspective, or it could be in banking, it could be a regulatory requirement, or we spot something we can do to enhance customer experience. We're able to enhance the capability of the bank. So if we're going to do that, we would, you're into more of a business case. So you want to be able to understand, with a high degree of accuracy, what it's going to cost, how long it's going to take, and then what are we going to get in return? And if we can understand what we're going to get in return, not all ideas, all ideas could be good, but they're not all as good as each other. So once we do that, then we will prioritize them, and we'll just triage and pick the top ones, and that's what we invest in. We always have more asks than we have money. and that's probably a good thing. It shows the creativity, but it's important that we're able to pick the right ones. So we have a governance process for that, and it works pretty well. There's a couple of things I'd say. The first thing is not all legacy is legacy. So I think about it in two ways. There's legacy and there's heritage. And the fundamental difference for me is that legacy systems are old systems which may be out of support or causing us problems or which we have a concern about, and we have to wrap special measures around those to maintain those services. Heritage might be something that could be quite old, but it functions very well and it's reliable and performs, and we don't really have to worry about it. So old is not necessarily bad. So I think about it in those two ways. Now, if we're delivering change on top of that, there's a few things we have to consider. The first is that any change we make in a complex environment can have knock-on effects. So we have to consider how that will work. And it's important that when we're architecting and designing solutions, we architect and design for the operation of those systems, not just the delivery of the capability. So once it's up and running, is it going to be something that we can run efficiently and effectively? Is it something that is supportive of change happening without causing disruption? And you can design those requirements in at the beginning, so that's something we're careful to try and do. So that will be important. If we do that and we're cognizant of legacy, then the two should sit together. And at the same time, we're also working to remove legacy and to reduce that. And we've put a lot of investment in over the last 3 years. We made some real inroads on that space. And we're entering now in the next 3 years, we'll continue that work, but we're entering into a piece of work where we're going to do a significant application rationalization. So we'll reduce the number of apps, and obviously where we'll start will be in the old stuff. So if we can get that right, we'll continue to simplify our landscape and make it more robust. So that's some of the things that I would be thinking about in that space. One of the challenges that we would have, any CIO would have, or any IT organization would have, is there's just this plethora of new technologies coming all the time. It just comes at us. And then on top of that, you get stuff that, what the Gartner hype curve, we'll get things that come along on the Gartner hype curve, and there's a lot of noise about it, and sometimes someone in a business function or someone in IT or someone in a board or whatever will come in and say, well, hey, why aren't we getting on this bandwagon of this thing? It's very important from a CIO perspective that you understand what's coming and what's possible, but you're also very practical about where it fits on your roadmap. It's more important from an IT perspective that we are driving business value than delivering technology. And sometimes from a technologist's perspective, we can lose sight of that. So technology for technology's sake is a bad investment. At the same time, if we understand the business strategy and we understand what's possible in the technology, we should be able to match the two up. And sometimes understanding the technology means that we can come and have a conversation either internally to ourselves or with some people in different parts of the organization to talk about, the art of the possible. What might we be able to do now or in 2 years or 3 years? And if you can do that, you can filter out the noise, because you can keep it in line with your business strategy and you can line it up with your technical strategy, and then you can say, how do the two fit together? Simple examples, there's lots of noise about artificial intelligence now. This would have kicked off 3 years ago. Really, this hype would have started building up. Hasn't really landed for a lot of people yet. We're seeing some examples of it. We're now engaging in that conversation more meaningfully. We've had a number of pilots. We're figuring out how it fits in our strategy. Had we got involved in that 3 years ago, we would have burned a lot of cycles for no return. So those are things that I would have in my approach to keeping abreast of what's out there, but at the same time not falling under the wave of it all. One of the things about being in the IT space is it never stays still, and you have to either keep moving forward or die, right? And that's part of why I love it. When I think about CIOs staying relevant, there's a couple of things. The first thing is there's core activity that we do. We talked about it earlier. There's running the core services, keeping your organization up and running, as we do here in the bank. And that has value. And if you can improve how well you do that, if you can simplify it and reduce cost, that adds value to your organization. So don't dismiss that. There is a sense sometimes when I talk to some people in IT that they feel that stuff's kind of boring and not interesting. But actually, it's critically important. And if you become really excellent at how you operate, it can be a strategic advantage. If your competition are not operating as well, it's a strategic advantage. So it's not necessarily front of house, but that doesn't mean it's boring. It absolutely can have an impact. So as a CIO, delivering on that is a start point to staying relevant. If you think about it from a poker perspective, that's your table stakes. If you get that in, now you can play the game. So now you can go have a conversation about what else we can do to enable the organization and to deliver net new value. From an individual's perspective as a CIO, I think there's a few things. First of all, CIOs it's a leadership role first and foremost. Even just in terms of your own space, if you forget engaging and being relevant with the rest of the organisation, there's too much to be on top of. If you're running a large organisation from an IT perspective, there's just too much detail. So as much as anything else as a CIO, you must be able to be a leader. So you have to set a culture, you have to be clear on what's the purpose of the organisation. You have to get, if you've got a lot of smart, well-intentioned people working for you, it's very important that you help them to understand what we're trying to achieve and why we're trying to achieve it, and then maybe get out of the way and let them figure out how. Now, we have an accountability to make sure the how is right and that we stay on track. But I think first and foremost, it's a leadership role. And if you have that mindset, that makes it a lot easier to engage with the rest of the organisation outside of IT, up to board level, because you're in a leadership mindset. You're not caught in the detail. I do talk to some CIOs, and it seems to me like they're caught too much in the detail, and I think it's a dangerous trap. As a CIO, if you are a leader, what does it mean to me personally? What does it mean to others? These are a few things. So you've got different constituencies that you have to think about. You've got your internal organisation, so your own people. And as I said earlier, being clear with people about your purpose and what and why is very important, and letting them have the how. But there's another piece to it as well. I think from a leadership perspective, it's important that you challenge the status quo. Right? You should be challenging the status quo, because one of the things a leader should do is introduce disequilibrium into the system. You should be, if it's looking too steady, you give it a little rattle. If it's very rattly, you steady it down. So there's a kind of a nice kind of point of, mild stress in the system where you keep it going at its optimum kind of performance and moving forward. So that's one thing, challenging the status quo. Another thing that's very important then is, if you can create or inspire a shared vision, if you can create a vision for your own people and for other people in the organisation who are engaging with you about what it is that you're trying to achieve, then people can buy into it. We all want to, as human beings, if somebody can kind of paint a picture, or if you can paint a picture together of something that's worth doing, it generates a different kind of energy. Once that's in place, then really what you have to do is kind of a little bit of get out of the way, but it's enabling others to go do the thing. If they know what they need to do and they're figuring out how they need to do it, what can you do to simplify processes or the organisation, or put support structures in place to help them go and be successful? And this is true from an IT perspective, particularly a lot of what we deliver can be long term. So there's stuff we will deliver in an agile way that, we'll do regular releases. But if you're delivering complex IT change, it can run for a year or 2 years. And if you're trying to do something significant, it's going to run over a period of time. So even though people might be inspired, and they might be clear, and you've enabled people to go do the thing, we can all lose our way, and we can all sometimes lose a bit of motivation. So one of the other things as a leader is to continue to encourage people, and you encourage people along the journey so they can maintain their energy. And then the last thing for me is, if you've set a culture of behaviour, and if you've set a way of operating that you want to do as an organisation, it's really important then as a leader that you show up in that way and you lead by example. And if you have a certain set of behaviours you're expecting, you behave in that way. There's no room in leadership for do as I say, don't do as I do. So when I think about working with other C-suite roles in the bank, first of all, the environment we're in is pretty healthy. I'm aware of other people in CIO roles who struggle with this. I'm lucky that we're in an environment where the C-suite operates quite well together, so that's a good start. Even if it didn't, you have a responsibility and accountability to try and make it so. Right? But taking where I'm at, there's a number of C-suite roles that I would really engage with on a regular basis. I'll just give you an example of a couple. So we have a Chief Digital Officer. He and I work very closely together. We build a one strategy, a one technology strategy approach. So CIO, CDO can often be a toxic relationship, where they're in competition with each other, and that's not healthy. It's bad for an organisation. It's bad for the people in the IT organisation, never mind the broader organisation. So we're lucky. We sat down together when he took on the role. We've worked very closely together to come up with our approach. We're very open. If he's not around, I run the whole technology. If I'm not around, he runs the whole technology. We're very clear. We don't always agree on everything, but if we don't, we sit down and have a conversation about it. And have developed and continue to develop a one technology strategy. So that's really good. I think it's important to understand that you've different value propositions. If you're comfortable that there's different value propositions, then you can be good at what it is you have to do, rather than, you know, some people have a nature where they look to the other side of the fence and they kind of go, oh, I wish I was doing what the other person was doing. Well, maybe if you do the thing that you're signed up for, you'd feel good about that. So that's, you know, behaviourally, that's one of the things I think is important for people to consider. There's other roles that I would engage with around the rest of the bank. I mean, for example, in risk, you know, we have an operational risk function that we would engage with very closely. We would engage with our audit function very closely. We're engaging across a range of different functions that are critical to how we plan, execute, and operate the technology for the bank. The role of a regulator now is much higher than it would have been in the past, and regulators would be coming in not just from a prudential perspective, looking at the fiscal security from a bank point of view, but how you do things, like how you do your technology. It would not be unreasonable, based on conversations I've had with central bankers, that from a European perspective, certainly the two top risks that they would look at in any financial organisation is, you know, your capital liquidity, your financial security, and then technology risk. And that is second immediately. And it's because at this point the delivery of financial services is so crucial that the technology works for the delivery of financial services on a day-to-day basis. And, you know, it's critical on a minute-to-minute, day-to-day basis. You know, if nurses and teachers don't get paid, if people can't pay stuff at the shop, if, you know, whatever it is, seems small, but the engine of commerce can grind to a halt pretty quickly. So that's very important. So they are interested from that point of view. They're also interested because of the cyber and the data protection requirements. And that is stuff that they're increasingly engaging with us on. And it's good and proper that they do so, but that does require that, you know, when CIOs think about working with other parts of an organisation, they can often find themselves in a mindset which is kind of order taker. Actually, you should be looking out, and this is how I'm working with risk and audit and others, we're looking out and saying, we need support from you, we need help to be able to understand. It might be a regulation, it might be how an interpretation of a regulation might occur. And if you can connect with the other C-suite roles in that way, then you generate a genuine partnership type relationship. And it's important for CIOs to do that and come away from, you know, what used to be, and some people still find, a kind of an order taker mode. If you get that, you're game on.